My son banned me from his wedding for warning him about a walking red flag, so I froze my card. Now he's trapped in a marriage he can't escape. My name's Alan. I'm 52 years old and live in Carmel, Indiana. I've been divorced for almost a decade now, and if you ask me what that time's been like, I'll probably tell you the truth. It's been a slow unraveling, not of my own life, but of my son's. Nathan was 13 when it happened. One night his mom, Lauren, told us she wasn't happy, and 2 weeks later she was packed up and living with a guy named Eric, her co-worker, apparently not so recently divorced himself. 6 months after that she married him. Just like that, our family of 3 became something else entirely. Something Nathan never quite adjusted to. I remember watching Nathan's face during their wedding photos. It was one of those fake smile moments, his shoulders stiff in that gray suit Lauren insisted on. And I remember thinking, he looks like someone else's kid. Not because of how he looked, but because of how lost he seemed standing among people who barely knew him. That first year after the divorce, he spent half his time with me and half at Lauren's new place, which got even more crowded after she had 2 more kids with Eric. Suddenly Nathan was the oldest of 4, and the only one who didn't quite belong. He never said it out loud, but I could see it in how he clung to me when I picked him up. Like he was trying to make sure someone still saw him. That's when I made a quiet promise to myself. I would never miss a moment. I went to every school play, every basketball game. I signed up for field trips, did pick-up and drop-off, even volunteered at that god-awful science camp. If he needed someone in his corner, I would be there. And for a while, I thought it helped. He talked to me about his teachers, his friends. He'd help me cook dinner, play music in the car, laugh at stupid jokes we'd come up with. But somewhere along the way, I started to worry I'd overdone it. Like I had tried so hard to be present that I hadn't noticed I was holding too tight. By the time he was in high school, Nathan wasn't quite sure what he wanted out of anything. He drifted between interests, tried band, quit band. Tried soccer, quit that too. And when college came around, he enrolled at IU, only to call me one afternoon and say he was taking a break to figure himself out. I asked what that meant, and he just shrugged and said, I don't know. Everyone's in such a rush to be someone. I just want to breathe for a bit. Except breathing turned into hanging out with guys who slept till noon and argued about things they didn't really care about. They called it soul-searching, but to me it looked a lot like drifting. And I couldn't help but wonder, had I done this? Had I tried so hard to keep him safe that I forgot to help him stand? I still saw flashes of the kid I raised, thoughtful, kind, loyal. But more and more, I also saw a young man floating without direction. And as much as I hated the idea, I had to admit to myself, maybe love, even the right kind, can still have the wrong effect. Nathan called me one Sunday morning out of the blue. It was early, not quite 8 a.m., which made me think something was wrong. But when I answered, he was oddly upbeat. Dad, I met someone. I sat up in bed, rubbing my eyes. Yeah, he said, already laughing a little. She's amazing. You'll love her. That was the first time I heard Tanya's name. From what Nathan told me, she worked at a boutique downtown and was super smart and totally misunderstood. Her words, not his. She was 27, 4 years older than him, and had already been married once, but, according to Nathan, that was a mistake on both their parts. I didn't say anything then. I just let him talk. And boy, did he talk. Said they met at a bookstore, bonded over a poetry collection, and had spent every day together since. Over the next few weeks, Tanya's name came up constantly. Tanya says I need to eat more protein. Tanya thinks I should start journaling. Tanya doesn't believe in traditional career paths. Every time we talked, it was like Nathan was borrowing her voice. I started digging, not to control him, but to protect him. I searched online and found an old wedding registry. The date was less than 2 years ago. Then a string of posts about some art gallery job, followed by a retail gig, and finally nothing. She bounced around from place to place, always starting fresh, never staying long. There were photos too, grainy ones from Facebook and tagged images that showed a lot of partying and a rotating door of best friends. She had this way of talking online like she was always the victim of something bigger. Jobs didn't understand her. Exes had wronged her. The world just didn't get her. I tried bringing it up gently. We were sitting in a cafe, and I said, hey, I know you're into Tanya, but maybe slow down a bit. Just make sure you're seeing things clearly. Nathan's eyes narrowed. Why would you even say that? I looked her up, I admitted. Just trying to understand who she is. You Googled her. He snapped. That's insane, Dad. That's controlling. No, I paused. It's concern. That's all. You're my son. He pushed back his chair. You never trust me to make my own decisions. Ever. That's not true. It is. His voice cracked a little. You don't see it, but you've been doing this my whole life. Watching. Hovering. Doubting. I wanted to argue, but I didn't. Because deep down, maybe he had a point. Still, something about Tanya didn't sit right with me. And no matter how much Nathan defended her, how he'd never felt this way before, or how she actually listens to him, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was falling into something he didn't understand. It's a helpless thing, watching your kid walk into what looks like a storm, only to have him tell you it's sunshine. I knew if I pushed too hard, I'd drive him away. But staying quiet felt like betrayal too, like I was just waiting for the fallout instead of trying to prevent it. That night, I sat on my porch with a cold beer, staring out at the yard, wondering how the hell you tell your child that love isn't always enough, especially when he's too deep in it to see the cracks forming. I was standing in line at the grocery store when Nathan called. He didn't bother with a hello, just blurted it out like he couldn't hold it in any longer. "We're getting married," he said. "In 6 weeks." I stepped out of line, heart pounding. "Wait, what?" "We set the date yesterday," he said. "We already booked the venue, found an officiant. Tanya wants to keep it small but meaningful. You know, intimate." "You just met her," I said, too stunned to hide it. "You've been together, what, 3 months?" "4, he corrected, like that changed everything. "And it's real, Dad. I've never been more sure of anything." I leaned against a display of canned soup and tried to keep my voice steady. "Why the rush?" "It's not a rush," he said quickly. "It's timing. It just feels right. Have you thought about where you'll live? Or how you'll pay for the wedding? Do you have a budget?" "Don't start this," he muttered. "You're doing the thing again. The checklist thing." "It's not a checklist, Nathan. It's called planning." He went quiet, and for a second, I thought maybe he was listening. But then he spoke again, low, defensive. "Tanya says if people aren't supportive, we don't need them there." I blinked. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," he hesitated, "if you can't be on board with this, maybe you shouldn't come." My mouth went dry. "You're uninviting me?" "No," he snapped. "I'm setting a boundary. If all you're going to do is question us, then yeah, maybe it's better if you're not there." There it was. The ultimatum. Support him blindly, or stay out of it entirely. We hung up without resolving anything. I sat in my car afterward, staring at the steering wheel, furious and heartbroken. I had spent years being his anchor, showing up for every play, every scraped knee, every late-night breakdown. And now I was being shut out of the most important day of his life. When I got home, I poured myself a drink and opened my laptop. I logged into the joint emergency credit card account I'd set up for him back in college, the one he still used for occasional help. The most recent charge? A $1,000 payment to a wedding planner in Indianapolis. Then 2 tuxedo deposits. A catered tasting. All without telling me. That's when I made the call. Not to him, but to the bank. I froze the card. No notice, no warning. Just done. It wasn't about punishing him. It was about boundaries. Real ones. He wanted to make adult choices. Then he needed to carry the weight of them. Later that night, I got a text. "Nathan, did you freeze the card?" I didn't reply. "Nathan, that money was for the wedding. You knew that." Still, I said nothing. "Nathan, you're trying to ruin this." Just like always. I turned my phone off after that. Not out of anger, but out of self-preservation. I loved my son more than anything, but love didn't mean funding a fantasy, especially one built on fast feelings and shaky ground. Maybe I had overprotected him once, but this time, I was stepping back. And if he fell, I had to let him learn how to stand up on his own. The next morning, I called my dad. "Need a favor," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "It's Nathan." There was a pause on the other end. "What kind of favor?" "Talk some sense into him. About the wedding. About Tanya." "He won't listen to me." My dad sighed, long and slow. "Bring him over." So that Saturday, I picked Nathan up under the pretense of grabbing lunch. He was still cold with me, arms crossed, eyes locked on the passenger window. "You could have just told me you froze the card," he muttered as we pulled into my dad's driveway. "And you could have told me you were using it for a wedding I wasn't invited to." I shot back. He didn't respond. My dad, George, was waiting on the porch, wearing one of his old army ball caps and sipping coffee from a ceramic mug that said, "I don't do mornings." He wasn't a big talker, but when he did speak, people usually shut up and listened. Nathan looked surprised when he saw him. "Is this an ambush?" "No," I said. "It's a sit down." George motioned us into the living room and sat down in his recliner like it was a throne. Nathan took the edge of the couch, stiff as a board. "I hear you're in love," my dad started. Nathan shifted uncomfortably. "Yeah. And you think getting married is the solution?" Nathan narrowed his eyes. "What's that supposed to mean?" George took a sip of coffee. "Means you're trying to solve a 20-year plan with 4 months of feelings." "I know what I'm doing," Nathan said, defensive again. "We're adults." "Being an adult," George said slowly, "means knowing when to slow down. It means thinking long enough to ask yourself who's going to be there when the cake's stale and the arguments start over who forgot to take out the trash." Nathan didn't answer. George leaned forward, voice even lower. "Marriage is a contract, not a fairy tale. You think love is enough, but I've seen 100 loves fall apart because nobody thought about the bills, the mornings, the years. Why does everyone keep acting like I'm a child?" Nathan snapped. "I'm not stupid." "Nobody's saying you're stupid," George replied. "We're saying you're rushing." And rushing costs more than a wedding deposit. Nathan stared at the floor. We're not telling you not to get married, I added. We're telling you to think. That's all. There was a long silence. And then Nathan stood up. Tanya didn't want me to come here, he said. She said it'd be a waste of time. That told me everything I needed to know. He grabbed his jacket and walked out without another word. We let him go. George and I sat there for a while after that, both of us staring at the empty space where Nathan had just been. He'll learn, George finally said. Might just take a little pain first. I nodded. Yeah, but it's hard as hell to watch. George didn't say anything after that. He just sipped his coffee, eyes on the door, like he was waiting for someone who wasn't coming back, at least not yet. Nathan and Tanya got married on a Saturday in early spring. I didn't go. I spent the day at my cabin near Lake Monroe, chopping wood, drinking coffee, and doing my best to ignore the world. No phone, no messages, just quiet. It was supposed to be one of the proudest moments of my life, watching my only son get married. Instead, I was pacing around a dusty living room, trying not to picture him standing at some makeshift altar with a woman he barely knew. Around 2 in the afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was Liam, one of Nathan's college friends. We hadn't talked much since high school, but I guess he felt like I needed to know. Hey, just wanted to say I'm sorry you weren't there today, he said. It was rough. I didn't ask for details, but he gave them anyway. The wedding was held in a small event space behind a strip mall on the east side of town, cheap carpeting, dim lights, folding chairs. The venue was booked last minute after their original spot fell through because the deposit bounced. Apparently, Tanya had maxed out 2 credit cards, and they'd ended up taking out a high-interest personal loan to cover the rest. Tanya's mom kept saying she had a weird feeling, Liam said. Her dad didn't say much, just drank a lot. I let him talk. When he hung up, I didn't feel anything right away, just tired. Later that night, when I got home, I walked into Nathan's room. It hadn't changed much, same posters on the walls, same dent in the carpet where his old gaming chair used to roll back and forth. I stood there for a minute, then took the note I'd written the night before and placed it on his desk. I know you don't want to hear from me right now, and that's okay. This isn't about judgment, it's just a reminder. I love you. No matter how this turns out, that won't change. And when you're ready, I'll be here. I left the note without signing it. I figured he'd know it was for me. Back in my own room, I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the floor. It wasn't just the fact that I missed his wedding. It was knowing I didn't belong there, that he didn't want me there, that this milestone, this huge moment in a father's life, it wasn't mine anymore. I raised him. I taught him how to ride a bike, how to shave, how to tie a tie. I stayed up with him when he had the flu, drove him to every baseball game, clapped louder than anyone at every school recital. But when it came time for the biggest day of his life, I was a ghost. It wasn't even about the wedding. Not really. It was the slow realization that I'd been replaced, not by Tanya, not by anyone specific, but by this version of Nathan who thought being a man meant cutting off the people who cared the most. I laid down that night without turning the lights off, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a father. I just felt like a man in an empty house, waiting for his son to figure it out the hard way. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Nathan showed up at my office. No call, no text, just walked through the door looking like he hadn't slept in days. His hair was a mess, eyes bloodshot, hoodie halfway zipped with a ketchup stain on the front. He didn't even say hello, just stood there in the doorway, hands shoved deep in his pockets. I stood up slowly. Hey. He gave me a tight nod. Got a minute? I motioned him in. He sat down across from me and leaned forward like he was trying to hold himself together by the edges of the desk. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't serious, he said, voice hoarse. We're struggling. I waited. Let him take his time. The rent's late. The loan payments are killing us. Tanya's out of work. The boutique cut hours. I'm doing delivery gigs and some temp stuff, but it's not enough. We're drowning, Dad. I sat back, arms crossed. So what are you asking? He blinked, like he hadn't expected me to come right out and say it. I don't know. Maybe some help. A loan. Just something to get us through the next few months. There it was. The old pattern knocking again. I looked at him. Really looked. He wasn't arrogant anymore. He wasn't lashing out or smug or spinning lines about passion and soulmates. He looked tired, embarrassed, like someone who just realized real life doesn't run on dreams and charm. I get that it's hard, I said. I've been there. But I told you before, Nathan, I'm not going to fund choices I warned you about. He stared at the desk, jaw tight. I know you don't approve of her. This isn't about her. I cut in. This is about accountability. You made adult decisions. That means adult consequences. His eyes welled up. Not full tears, but close. I thought you'd at least try to understand. I do, I said. That's why I'm not yelling. That's why I'm listening. But I'm not handing over a check to fix a hole you dug with your eyes wide open. He slumped back in the chair. For a long moment, he didn't say anything. Then he stood up, slow and stiff. Thanks for nothing, he muttered. I didn't respond. He turned and walked out. A minute later, my phone buzzed. It was him, calling again. I let it ring once, twice, then picked up. His voice was sharp this time. Bitter. You think you're proving a point, don't you? You think this is some noble lesson. But you're just letting your son drown because it makes you feel righteous. I didn't take the bait. You made it clear, I said calmly. You didn't want my opinion. You didn't want my presence. Now you don't get my money, either. So this is payback? No. This is parenting. The real kind. The kind that hurts like hell. Silence. Then he said, I never should have come. And hung up. I sat there in my office for a long time, staring at the door he'd walked out of. My hands were shaking, but I didn't regret what I said. I couldn't keep bailing him out. I couldn't be the net for every fall, not if it meant enabling him to keep making the same mistakes. But damn if it didn't feel like I'd just watched him slip further away. And maybe that was the price of doing the right thing, knowing that sometimes, it still doesn't feel right at all. The call came at 1:12 in the morning. I remember the exact time because I'd been tossing and turning for hours, and when the phone lit up with Nathan's name, my first thought was, something's wrong. I answered quickly. Nathan. His voice was low, panicked. Tanya might be pregnant. I sat up. Wait, what? She's late. Like, really late. We took a test yesterday, and it was kind of a blur. It looked positive, but the line was faint. We're going to the clinic tomorrow for a real test. I didn't say anything at first. Just breathed. He must have heard the silence, because he added, I don't know what to do. There it was, the raw honesty. The fear. The part of him I hadn't heard in months. All right, I said. I'll help you get an appointment. Just focus on getting some rest, okay? Thanks, Dad. I made a few calls the next morning, pulled a favor from an old friend who worked at a community health center, and got them squeezed in that afternoon. Nathan didn't ask how or why, just sent a text that said, appreciate it. For real. That week was strange. In a way, it reminded me of when he was a kid and got the flu so bad, he couldn't get out of bed. He hated being vulnerable, but in those moments, he let me carry the weight for a little while. This felt like that, like he was handing over the panic just for a bit, just to breathe. He came by the house 2 days later. No Tanya, just him. We sat on the back porch drinking coffee in silence. I don't think we're ready, he finally said. I mean, I know we're not. I didn't say, I told you so. I didn't bring up the wedding, or the money, or the warning signs. I just listened. She said if it's positive, we'll figure it out, he added. But I don't know what that even means. We sat there for a long time. No lectures, no guilt. Just quiet. Then came the clinic results. Negative. It was a false alarm. Nathan told me over the phone. She cried for a while after, he said. Then got mad. Said it's probably for the best since I wasn't acting excited. And how do you feel? I asked. He paused. Relieved, I think. But also confused. Like I was bracing for something big, and now it's just gone. That evening, Tanya called me. Not Nathan, Tanya. I think it's time you stop sitting on the sidelines, she said bluntly. If you really want to help Nathan, find him a job at your agency. Something stable. He needs direction. I held the phone a second too long before answering. I'll talk to him. But it has to be his decision. She scoffed. He doesn't know what's good for him right now. He needs someone to guide him. He has to want that, I said. You can't force it. The line went quiet. Then she muttered, I'm just trying to make things work. After we hung up, I had a strange feeling in my gut. Like the thought that had started between me and Nathan, that quiet return to something resembling closeness, wasn't going to last. Sure enough, by the weekend, Tanya was back to being cold. Snapping at Nathan, complaining about money, rolling her eyes when I offered to help with the resume draft. It was like the scare had pulled him closer to me just for a moment, but when the fear faded, so did the gratitude. And I was left right where I'd been all along, outside the circle, watching my son drift back into a storm he still didn't know how to navigate. It started with another argument about money, only this time, it wasn't about rent or bills. It was about what Nathan thought he was entitled to. We were at my house. He'd stopped by to talk, but I could tell he came with an agenda. Tanya wasn't with him, which usually meant the conversation might actually go somewhere. But I was wrong. He leaned against the kitchen counter, arms folded. So, what's your plan for everything? You know, long term. I looked up from my coffee. Everything. Yeah, the house. The agency. The life insurance stuff. Retirement accounts. I just figured, you've probably made arrangements. I raised an eyebrow. Nathan, are you asking about my will? He shrugged like it was a casual inquiry. Just thinking about the future. I put my mug down a little harder than I meant to. You've never asked about my health or my well-being, but now you're curious about my estate? He shifted, but didn't back off. I mean, I am your only kid. You don't have anyone else. I just assumed that you'd inherit everything. His face went red. I didn't mean it like that. You sure about that? We stared at each other for a second, both of us too proud to look away first. I sighed. Nathan, nothing's guaranteed. Inheritance isn't a safety net. It's not a solution to poor planning or rushed decisions. If you're counting on what I leave behind instead of building something of your own, then you're already in trouble. He scoffed. Well, so now I'm lazy. I didn't say that. But you're acting like someone who's waiting for life to hand him a bailout. He shook his head, stepping back. You're unbelievable. I can't talk to you about anything without you turning it into a lecture. No, you just don't like hearing things you don't agree with. He stared at me for a second, then grabbed his jacket off the chair and headed for the door. As he walked out, he muttered, Tanya was right. You only care when it makes you feel superior. The door shut hard behind him. I stood there for a while, the house quiet except for the hum of the fridge. I should have been used to it by now, the emotional whiplash of trying to love someone who only showed up when they wanted something. Later that week, I got a call from Jake's parents, the couple renting them the basement. I'm sorry to bother you, his father said, clearly frustrated, but I've got to vent. They're eating our food, sleeping till noon, blasting music at night, and acting like we owe them something. It's like having two teenagers under our roof. I rubbed my temple. I know how you feel. I mean, I feel for them, but we're retired. We didn't sign up for this. Neither did I said. He paused, then sighed. We just thought you should know. After we hung up, I sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where Nathan used to do homework, where we'd eat pancakes on Saturdays, where I'd once listened to his middle school band practice and pretended it didn't make my ears bleed. Now it was just me. And a growing list of people Nathan was burning bridges with, one entitled misstep at a time. I didn't know how much more distance there'd be before he finally realized those bridges might not always be rebuilt. The call came late on a Wednesday night. I was halfway through folding laundry when my phone buzzed. I glanced down, expecting spam or a late email. But it was Nathan. I hesitated before answering. Things between us had been cold ever since the inheritance talk. Weeks of silence, maybe longer. When I picked up, the line was quiet. Dad? His voice was low, shaky. Yeah, I'm here. A breath. Then another. It's falling apart, he said finally. Everything. I set the laundry down and sat on the edge of the couch. Talk to me. He didn't rush it. Just started unraveling, piece by piece. Tanya was angry all the time. The apartment they'd found after leaving Jake's basement was too expensive, and the job he'd taken wasn't covering enough. He worked 6 days a week, slept maybe 4 hours a night, and still couldn't keep up. She yells, he said quietly. About bills. About how I'm not doing enough. About how this isn't the life she imagined. I didn't interrupt. She said she feels alone. But I'm right there, you know? I'm doing everything I can, and it's never enough. He went quiet for a moment. Then, barely above a whisper, he added, I think we rushed into this. I swallowed hard. Do you regret it? Another pause. I don't know. Maybe. Some days, yeah. I waited. Do you remember the night I told you we were getting married? He asked suddenly. Yeah, I said softly. I remember. I told you not to come if you couldn't be supportive. You did. There was a long silence. Then, finally, I was angry. I shouldn't have said that. I closed my eyes. Not quite an apology, but close. I left a note in your room that day, I told him. I just wanted you to know I loved you, even if I didn't agree with what you were doing. I found it, he said. Didn't read it right away, but, yeah, I saw it. Another pause. I miss how things used to be, he admitted. Back when it was just me and you. When everything made more sense. I wanted to tell him he could come home. That we could fix this. That I'd always have a place for him. But I didn't. Instead, I said, Nathan, I love you. But you're the one who has to decide what comes next. I know, he said. I didn't think it would get this hard. Real life sneaks up on people. Even the smart ones. He let out a tired laugh. I thought I had it all figured out. We all do, I said. Until we don't. It got quiet again after that. Not an awkward quiet, more like a shared breath. Like maybe, for the first time in a long time, we were on the same side of something. He didn't promise to fix things. He didn't say he was leaving her. But he admitted things weren't working. And that alone felt like a crack in the wall he'd built between us. I didn't push for more. I just sat there, phone warm in my hand, listening to my son breathe. And for the first time in months, I let myself believe there was still something left to rebuild. A few months passed. Nathan and Tanya moved into the basement of her parents' house. Not ideal, but rent-free. Nathan picked up a second job, working part-time at a hardware store in the mornings and doing rideshare at night. Tanya stayed home most days. According to her, job hunting was emotionally exhausting. I didn't hear much from either of them. Occasionally, Nathan would text me a photo of something he'd built or fixed, asking for tips. Once, he called to ask about tire pressure, and we ended up talking for 10 whole minutes, mostly about nothing. I didn't push for more. He was tired. I could hear it in his voice. He sounded like a guy trying to outrun regret but too proud to stop running. One Thursday evening, I got a call from Tanya's dad. We hadn't spoken since before the wedding. Look, Alan, he said with a sigh, I'm not trying to dump this on you, but I thought you should know what's going on. He sounded worn down, like someone who hadn't had a full night's sleep in a while. They're just acting like kids, he said, leaving dishes everywhere, expecting us to cook. They argue in front of my wife, then act like nothing happened. It's exhausting. I nodded silently, staring out the kitchen window. I mean, Nathan's working hard. I'll give him that, he continued. But Tanya? She's glued to her phone half the day and says nobody's hiring, but won't even fill out applications. Then when we say something, she says we're being controlling. He paused. I don't know how long this setup's going to last, he said. We're trying to be patient, but it's wearing thin. I didn't say much. Just thanked him for the call and hung up. I stood there for a long time afterward, thinking about all the versions of Nathan I'd known. The little boy who couldn't sleep unless I checked under his bed for monsters. The teenager who could never decide what sport he liked best. The young man who once said he wanted to be a teacher, or maybe a therapist, or maybe a poet. And now this, a husband stuck in a life that looked nothing like the one he used to talk about. It's a strange thing, being a parent to an adult. You can't ground them. You can't rescue them. You can only stand nearby, like a lighthouse on the shore, waiting to see if they'll steer toward the light or drift further into the dark. Sometimes I caught myself rehearsing what I'd say if he showed up at my door, suitcase in hand, eyes filled with the same quiet shame I'd heard in his voice that night he called to say everything was falling apart. I never finished the rehearsal, because part of me was scared it would never happen, and another part was scared that it would, and I wouldn't know what to do. So I waited. I went to work, cooked my dinners for one, fixed up a few things around the house that didn't really need fixing, kept his room clean, just in case. And every once in a while, when my phone buzzed with a text from him, even if it was just, what kind of oil goes in a Civic? I smiled, because it meant he hadn't forgotten. And maybe, just maybe, that meant he wasn't too far gone to find his way back.